Chapter 1. The morning everything changed. The industrial ceiling fans whirred lazily above the workshop of creative stands and solutions, pushing around the early morning air thick with the smell of sawdust and coffee. Marcus Chun, the company's lead estimator, stood frozen in front of his computer screen, his usually steady hands trembling as he double-checked the numbers for the fourth time. No, 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 he whispered, running his fingers through his salt and pepper hair. This can't be right. The workshop buzzed with its usual morning activity. Sarah Martinez, their project manager, was directing the installation team about today's deliveries, her clipboard clutched firmly against her chest as always. Elena Petrov, their newest designer, sat at her drafting table, headphones on, completely absorbed in her latest creation. Tom Richardson, the gruff but efficient operations manager, was arguing with someone on the phone about a delayed shipment. And David Kim, their master craftsman, worked silently in his corner, his careful hands bringing Elena's designs to life. None of them knew yet. None of them realized that Marcus's miscalculation on the Dubai World Expo project would threaten everything they'd built over the last decade. Hey, Marcus. Sarah's voice cut through his panic. Did you finish the material estimates for the Dubai project? The supplier needs confirmation by noon. Marcus felt his throat tighten. Sarah approached his desk, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. She must have noticed something in his expression because her professional smile faltered. Marcus, what's wrong? He turned the monitor toward her, pointing at the spreadsheet with a shaking finger. I made a mistake, Sarah. A massive one. I was working late last night, trying to finalize everything, and I transposed some numbers in the materials calculation. Sarah's eyes widened as she scanned the figures. $3 million? That can't be right. Let me see. She leaned over his shoulder, her long dark hair brushing against his desk as she scrutinized the calculations. The client already signed off on the original quote. Marcus continued, his voice hollow. We're contractually bound to deliver at that price point. This would bankrupt us. The weight of his words hung in the air. Sarah straightened up slowly, her usual confidence visibly shaken. We need to tell the others. Now, Tom was the first to react, his face turning an alarming shade of red as he slammed his phone down. How the hell did this happen? We have redundancies in place specifically to prevent this kind of mistake. Elena pulled off her headphones, her young face creased with worry. Maybe we could redesign it? Use different materials. In 3 weeks. Tom scoffed. Impossible. David remained silent, his weathered hands still working methodically on the prototype in front of him. But his shoulders had tensed noticeably. Listen, Sarah interjected, trying to maintain calm. Pointing fingers won't solve this. We need solutions. Marcus barely heard the ensuing discussion. His mind raced through the implications, not just for the company, but for everyone in this room. Sarah, who had just put a down payment on her first house. Elena, fresh out of design school with student loans to pay. Tom, with 2 kids in college. David, who had worked here since the company's founding. It's my responsibility. He finally spoke up, his voice cutting through the arguing. I'll resign. Maybe if we explain to the client. No one's resigning, Sarah said firmly, but her voice carried an edge of uncertainty. We're going to figure this out. Together. Just then, Elena's computer pinged with a new email. The room fell silent as she read it aloud. Urgent update from Dubai team. They need the final designs and material list by end of day. They're starting ground preparation tomorrow morning. 5 pairs of eyes met across the workshop, each person realizing that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of the project, but their entire company's future. David finally set down his tools and stood up. In his 20 years of crafting exhibition stands, he'd seen plenty of crises, but nothing quite like this. He walked over to the project board, studying the preliminary designs with an intensity that made everyone hold their breath. We might have one option, he said quietly, but it's risky. Very risky. The morning sun streamed through the high windows, casting long shadows across the workshop floor. Outside, delivery trucks rumbled past, and the world continued turning. But inside creative stands and solutions, 5 people stood on the brink of either disaster or their greatest challenge yet. The question was, which would it be? Chapter 2. Desperate Measures. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Creative Stands and Solutions workshop as Elena paced between the workstations, her tablet clutched tightly against her chest. Her latest designs for modifying the Dubai project flashed on various screens around the room. If we substitute these materials, she explained, pointing to her 3D rendering, we could cut costs by almost 40%. Tom shook his head, running calculations on his phone. Even with the substitutions, we're still over budget by more than $1 million. Sarah watched Marcus from the corner of her eye. He hadn't spoken since his revelation this morning. Just sat there methodically reviewing old project files. His usual confident posture now slumped and defeated. David stepped forward, examining Elena's designs with his experienced eye. These substitute materials won't hold up in Dubai's climate. The heat alone would compromise the structural integrity within days. Elena's shoulders sagged. It was her third rejected proposal of the day. What about our contacts at Metropolitan Supplies? Sarah suggested. They've helped us out of tight spots before. Tom barked a harsh laugh. We still owe them for the Olympic Pavilion job. They won't extend us more credit. The tension in the room reached a breaking point when Marcus's phone rang. Everyone froze as they saw the Dubai client's name on the display. Marcus stared at it, paralyzed, until Sarah stepped forward and answered it herself. Creative Stands and Solutions. This is Sarah Martinez, she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. The conversation that followed made everyone's blood run cold. Yes, sir. I understand. No, we're finalizing the details now. Of course, we appreciate the opportunity. Sarah paced as she spoke, her free hand clenched into a fist. After she hung up, the silence was deafening. They're sending their lead architect tomorrow, she announced. They want an in-person preview of our progress. Elena collapsed into her chair. David closed his eyes. Tom swore under his breath, but it was Marcus who finally broke. I'll tell them the truth, he said, standing up. It's my mistake. I'll take full responsibility. No, David said suddenly, his quiet voice cutting through the chaos. Everyone turned to look at him. He stood by the material storage area, studying something intently. I think I might have an idea, he continued, but you're not going to like it. At this point, Tom muttered, I'd consider selling my soul. David walked to his workbench and pulled out an old sketchbook. Remember that experimental design I worked on last year? The one that got rejected for being too radical? Sarah's eyes widened as she began to understand. The self-supporting honeycomb structure? It was too expensive to produce then, David explained, flipping through his sketches. But if we combine it with Elena's material substitutions and add some modifications I've been thinking about. Hope flickered across the room, but Tom remained skeptical. The client specifically approved the original design. They're not going to accept some experimental structure. Maybe they will, Elena chimed in, suddenly energized. She grabbed her tablet and started sketching rapidly. If we present it right, David, what if we added interactive elements here and here? For the first time since morning, Marcus stood up and joined the discussion. The structural calculations would be completely different. I'd have to start from scratch. Good, Sarah said firmly. Starting from scratch is better than starting from a mistake. As the team huddled around David's workbench, the late afternoon sun painted the workshop in golden hues. They had less than 24 hours to completely reimagine a $3 million project. It was either going to be their greatest innovation or their most spectacular failure. And then Tom's phone rang again. This time, it wasn't a client. It's the bank, he said grimly. They want to discuss our credit line. Chapter 3, The Last Chance. The next morning arrived with merciless speed. Creative Stands and Solutions workshop had transformed into a war room, with prototype sections scattered across every surface. David hadn't left his workbench all night, his skilled hands moving with practiced precision despite his exhaustion. Elena's tablet displayed the evolving 3D model, her innovative additions to David's design glowing in blue light. Marcus sat nearby, furiously recalculating load-bearing metrics for the new structure. Sarah paced by the entrance, rehearsing her presentation. The interactive elements showcase sustainable materials while reducing overall cost and, She stopped mid-sentence as Tom burst through the door. "The bank's freezing our accounts," he announced, face ashen. "They're calling in our loans early." Marcus's calculator clattered to the floor. "How long?" "We have 48 hours to show proof of the Dubai project's viability, or they pull the plug." Tom collapsed into a chair. "Without access to our accounts, we can't even order materials for existing projects." Sarah checked her watch. "The Dubai team arrives in 1 hour. We have to make this work." David straightened up from his workbench, holding what looked like a miniature version of their new design. The prototype's honeycomb structure gleamed under the workshop lights, its innovative joints and interactive panels unlike anything they'd produced before. "It's ready," he said quietly. Elena rushed to help him carry it to the presentation area. As they set it up, she noticed his hands trembling slightly. "David, are you okay?" He shook his head. "This design, it's not just experimental. It's personal." Before Elena could ask what he meant, the workshop door opened. A team of suited executives entered, led by Mr. Rashid, the Dubai project's lead architect. Sarah stepped forward to greet them, but Mr. Rashid walked straight to the prototype. His expression remained unreadable as he circled it slowly. "This," he said finally, "is not what we approved." "Sir," Sarah began, "if you'll allow us to explain." "No need." Mr. Rashid turned to his team. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." The workshop fell silent. Marcus closed his eyes, accepting defeat. Tom gripped the edge of his desk. Elena felt tears threatening. But then David spoke, his quiet voice carrying an unusual edge of passion. 20 years ago, he said, stepping forward, "I lost my first company because I was too afraid to innovate. I played it safe, followed every rule, and went bankrupt anyway." He gestured to the prototype. "This design isn't just a solution to a budget problem. It's a statement about who we are as a company." Mr. Rashid raised an eyebrow. "And who is that?" "Problem solvers, innovators, risk takers." David's voice grew stronger. "This structure will use 40% less material while providing 60% more interactive space. It will consume less energy, leave a smaller carbon footprint, and attract more attention than any conventional design." He pressed a button, and the prototype's panels came alive with light, demonstrating the interactive elements Elena had integrated. "Most importantly," David continued, "it will tell Dubai's story of innovation and sustainability in a way no traditional stand ever could." The silence that followed seemed eternal. Mr. Rashid studied David's face, then turned back to the prototype. Finally, he spoke. "You do understand that if this fails, both our companies will suffer tremendous losses?" "Yes," David replied simply. Mr. Rashid nodded slowly. "Then let us hope your confidence is well-founded." He turned to his team. "Call the engineers. We need to review these specs immediately." As the Dubai team huddled around the prototype with their tablets, Sarah pulled David aside. "Why didn't you ever tell us about your first company?" David watched Marcus step forward to explain the structural calculations to the engineers. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "you need to lose everything to find out what you're really capable of." But even as hope flickered through the workshop, Tom's phone buzzed with another message from the bank. They had just 24 hours left to save everything they'd built, and Mr. Rashid's engineers were already frowning at their calculations. Chapter 5. The Breaking Dawn. Dawn broke over the workshop as the test segment took final shape. David's salvaged materials had birthed something entirely new, a hybrid structure that seemed to defy conventional engineering. "The load distribution is remarkable," one of Mr. Rashid's engineers admitted, studying his stress test readings. "The recycled aerospace-grade aluminum from your old projects actually strengthens the honeycomb design." But Marcus spotted a problem. The central joint is showing microfractures under sustained pressure. Elena, who hadn't slept in 36 hours, suddenly straightened. "David, what about that experimental carbon fiber compound from your 2019 project?" David shook his head. "It's not compatible with." He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening. "Unless..." He rushed to his workbench, pulling out the remains of a failed project he'd done for a Formula One racing team. Inside was a hybrid joining system he'd developed but never implemented. Sarah's phone buzzed. The Dubai board meeting starts in 10 minutes, she announced. Tom, who'd been making calculations, looked up grimly. Even if this works, we still need $2 million in materials for the full project. The bank won't release our accounts without proof of viability. Mr. Rashid watched silently as David worked to integrate the Formula One joint into their test segment. His phone rang again. Dubai was waiting. Show me, he said simply. David stepped back from the completed test segment. It stood gleaming in the morning light, a perfect fusion of past and present innovations. The interactive panels Elena had designed pulsed with light, while the structural elements Marcus had calculated supported the weight with barely measurable stress. Mr. Rashid walked around it slowly, then made his call. Gentlemen, he said in Arabic, I need you to see something. He switched his phone to video mode, and for the next 10 minutes, David and Elena demonstrated every aspect of their hybrid design. The board members' faces on the screen moved from skepticism to interest to something approaching excitement. When the call ended, Mr. Rashid turned to the team. The board requires one last thing, he said. Everyone held their breath. They want to know why they should trust a company that nearly bankrupted itself to build something unprecedented. It was Marcus who stepped forward, finally finding his voice after days of self-doubt. Because we're not just fixing a mistake, he said. We're redefining what's possible. The future of creative stands and solutions hung on Mr. Rashid's next words. Chapter 6, The Decision. Mr. Rashid's phone lit up with a message from Dubai. The board has made their decision, he announced. They're prepared to increase the budget by 40%. If you can prove this design's viability within 24 hours. The words hit like a thunderbolt. The increased budget would solve their financial crisis, but the timeline seemed impossible. 24 hours. Tom exclaimed. We'd need a full construction crew. We are the crew, David said quietly. He turned to Elena. Your brother still works at the steel fabrication plant. Elena nodded slowly. He owes me a favor. Sarah was already on her phone. I can get the old installation team here in an hour. Marcus pulled up the materials list. With the increased budget, we could use the premium composites. The whole structure would be 30% lighter. But Mr. Rashid raised his hand. There's one condition. If you fail to complete a full-scale segment in 24 hours, you not only lose the contract, you'll be liable for breach of contract penalties. Tom calculated quickly. That would be $5 million. Mr. Rashid finished. The workshop fell silent. They weren't just risking their company anymore. They were risking their personal futures. David looked at his dismantled prototypes, then at his team. I've spent 20 years playing it safe after my first failure. Look where that got us. He picked up his tools. I'm done being afraid. Elena's brother arrived with a truck full of materials at midnight. The installation team worked through the early hours, guided by David's meticulous instructions and Elena's real-time design adjustments. As dawn approached again, Marcus discovered a critical flaw in the central support beam. The team had less than 3 hours left, and their last chance was slipping away. Tom stared at the half-finished structure, then at his team's exhausted faces. What he said next would change everything. Chapter 7, The Final Hour. As the first light of dawn broke over creative stands and solutions, the team found themselves in the final stretch of their 24-hour race to prove the viability of their innovative design. The tension in the workshop was thick, and the team was running on sheer adrenaline. Marcus sat hunched over his computer, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. If we reinforce the central support beam with the experimental carbon fiber compound, it should hold, he said, his voice gravelly and worn. Elena, despite her own exhaustion, quickly grabbed the carbon fiber compound and began applying it to the central beam. David, ever the perfectionist, supervised her work, his sharp eyes scanning for any potential errors. Time check, Sarah called out from across the workshop. She was pacing, phone in hand, ready to coordinate the final steps. We have less than an hour left. Tom paced nervously, his face etched with worry. We're cutting it too close. We need all hands on deck. Elena's brother, along with the installation team, worked with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Despite their fatigue, their focus never wavered as they assembled the structure piece by piece. David's voice cut through the clamor. Everyone listen up. We need to lift the central support beam into place. On my count, 1, 2, 3. With a collective effort, the team heaved the reinforced beam into position. It fit perfectly, eliciting a momentary sigh of relief from everyone. Start securing it, Marcus instructed, urgency dripping from his voice. We can't afford any mistakes. Sarah's phone buzzed, and she answered it with trembling hands. Yes, we're in the final stages. We're confident it will hold. Thank you for your patience. As the clock continued its relentless march, the team pushed forward with renewed determination. They had come too far to let failure be an option. 10 minutes left, Tom announced, his voice strained. We're almost there. David made the final adjustments to the interactive panels, ensuring they functioned seamlessly. Elena double-checked the structural integrity, her sharp eyes catching any potential flaws. 5 minutes, Sarah called out. Get ready for the final inspection. The team stepped back, sweat dripping down their faces, as they observed the completed full-scale segment. It stood tall and sturdy, a testament to their determination and ingenuity. Mr. Rashid and his engineers arrived for the final inspection. They circled the structure, scrutinizing every detail. The tension in the room was palpable. After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Rashid turned to the team. It's impressive. You've exceeded our expectations. The room erupted in cheers and applause. They had done it. The seemingly impossible task was complete, and they had secured their future. David looked around at his team, pride swelling in his chest. We did it, he said softly, tears of relief glistening in his eyes. Together, Marcus added, clapping a hand on David's shoulder. We did it together. Chapter 8. A new beginning. With the Dubai project secured, Creative Stands and Solutions found themselves in a position of renewed strength and optimism. The increased budget provided them with the financial stability they desperately needed, and their innovative design had garnered attention from other potential clients. David stood in the workshop, watching as the team dismantled the test segment to prepare for the full-scale construction in Dubai. The pride in his eyes was unmistakable. Hey, David, Marcus approached, a satisfied smile on his face. We did it. David nodded. We did it together. Elena joined them, her tablet in hand. We've already received inquiries from other clients interested in our hybrid design. This could open up new opportunities for us. Sarah and Tom walked over, their expressions reflecting a mix of relief and excitement. We've come a long way, Sarah said. And this is just the beginning, Tom added. We couldn't have done it without each of you. Your dedication and hard work made this possible. The team gathered in a circle, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced seemingly insurmountable challenges and emerged victorious. David raised a toast to Creative Stands and Solutions, to innovation, resilience, and the future. May we continue to redefine what's possible. As they clinked their glasses, the workshop was filled with a sense of accomplishment and hope. They had not only saved their company, but had also discovered their true potential as a team. The journey ahead was still filled with challenges, but they were ready to face them together. With their newfound confidence and determination, Creative Stands and Solutions was poised for a bright and promising future. Several weeks later, the team found themselves in Dubai, overseeing the installation of their innovative stand at the World Expo. The hybrid design, a perfect fusion of David's experimental techniques and Elena's interactive elements, was drawing attention and admiration from visitors and other exhibitors alike. Mr. Rashid approached them, a broad smile on his face. You've truly outdone yourselves. This is beyond what we could have imagined. Sarah beamed. Thank you, Mr. Rashid. It was a team effort. As the expo continued, Creative Stands and Solutions received numerous inquiries and accolades. Their reputation as pioneers in innovative design was solidified, and new projects began to pour in. Back at their headquarters, the atmosphere was one of continuous creativity and collaboration. They had expanded their team, bringing in fresh talent and new perspectives. David, now a mentor to the younger designers, often shared his story of failure and redemption. Sometimes, you need to take risks, he would say. Embrace innovation and don't be afraid to fail. That's how you find your true potential. Elena, now leading a team of designers, continued to push the boundaries of interactive and sustainable design. Marcus, with renewed confidence, became the go-to expert for complex calculations and structural integrity. Sarah and Tom, having navigated the company through its toughest times, took on leadership roles, ensuring the company's continued growth and success. Creative Stands and Solutions had not only survived but thrived. Their story was one of resilience, innovation, and the unbreakable spirit of a team that refused to give up. As they looked to the future, they knew there would be more challenges, but they were ready. Together, they would continue to innovate, inspire, and create solutions that left a lasting impact on the world. And so, a new chapter began for Creative Stands and Solutions, a chapter of boundless possibilities and endless innovation.